Hello, friends. Welcome to Traces, Myth, History, and Meaning. I am your host, Emily Oman, amateur historian and seeker of the mysterious. How are you doing today? Are we doing okay? This episode is called Snakes in Tornadoes. Do you like that? Snakes in tornadoes. Are we really going to talk about snakes in tornadoes? Well, yes. Yes, we are. But first, I have a question for you. Have you ever watched a movie and thought to yourself, gee, this really felt like this other movie, which, come to think of it, really felt like this other movie, which also felt like this other movie. Like, why is it that I saw Avatar and I was like, wait a second, this is basically Pocahontas, which is essentially Fern Gully, which is also somehow Dances with Wolves. I mean, like, what is going on here? Why is that? Why are all the stories the same? And is there a why? Is there a meaning? And if so, what is it? What can it teach us about life? These are the questions that I want to talk about today. We're going to get into a myth. We're going to break it down to its most basic parts, and then we're going to talk about how this pattern shows up from the cellular level to the cosmic level, and from the earthly realm to the spiritual realm. Shall we begin? Okay, this is called the Descent of Inanna. Now there was the queen of earth and sky named Inanna, and one day she decides she must go to the underworld. Why does she go? Well, there's two versions. In one version, she hears a call, like in her soul. Inanna, Inanna, it calls, come to the underworld, which is very strange because she is the lord of the earth and the sky. Another version says that her sister's husband has died. Now, her sister is Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal is the queen of the underworld. So in that version, she says, because my older sister Ereshkigal, her husband, the bull of heaven, has died, I have come to bear witness to the funeral rites. Let the beer of his funeral rites be poured into the cup. Let it be done. Okay, so it could be a voice, an inner voice maybe. It could be an outer event. But either way, she is called to the underworld. Now, when she goes, she must take these 7 powers. What are these 7 powers, you ask? Well, the first is the crown. It's called Shurgara, and it is the crown of the steppe. The next is beads of lapis lazuli around her neck. The third is 2 egg-shaped lapis lazuli beads around her breasts. The fourth is a breastplate to protect her. The fifth is the golden ring around her finger. And the sixth was a lapis lazuli measuring rod and line. And finally, the 7th power was the pala, the garment of ladyship, it was called. So she takes these things and she heads out and she goes to the gate of the temple of the underworld. And there, let's read from the text. I have come to the underworld, and Nettie, the chief gatekeeper of the Kur, she said, I must speak to the queen of the underworld. And so they go, my queen, a maid, as tall as heaven, as wide as earth, as strong as the foundations of the city wall, she waits outside the palace gates. She has gathered together the 7 May, the 7 powers. She has taken them in her hands, and with the May in her possession, she has prepared herself. When Ereshkigal heard this, she slapped her thigh and she bit her lip, and she took the matter into her heart and dwelt on it. Then she spoke. Come, Nettie, my chief gatekeeper, to the Kur. Heed my words. Bolt the 7 gates of the underworld. Then, one by one, open each gate a crack. And let the holy priestess of heaven enter bowed low. Nettie heeded the words of his queen, and he bolted the 7 gates of the underworld, and he opened the outer gate. He said to the maid, come, Inanna, enter. When she entered the first gate, from her head the shigura was removed, the crown of the steppe. Inanna asked, what is this? She was told, quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. When she entered Through the second gate, from her neck, the small lapis lazuli beads were removed. What is this? Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. And when she entered the third gate, from her breast, the double strand of egg-shaped beads were removed. What is this? Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They must not be questioned. And then she goes to the fourth gate, and I'm sure you can figure out what happened next. The breastplate is taken from her. At the fifth gate, from her wrist, the golden ring was removed. And from the sixth gate, the lapis lazuli measuring rod and line was removed. And from the seventh, as you can guess, her pala was removed, the garment of ladyship. Again, every time she asks, what is this? And she is told, quiet, Inanna, the ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. Now, naked and bowed low, Inanna entered the throne room, and Ereshkigal rose from her throne, and Inanna stared toward the throne. The Ananuna, that's not how it's pronounced, the Anuna, the judges of the underworld, surrounded her, and they passed judgment upon her. Then Ereshkigal fastened on Inanna the eye of death. She spoke against her the word of wrath, uttered against her the cry of guilt. She struck her. Inanna was turned into a corpse, like a piece of rotted meat, and she was hung on a hook on the wall. Yikes. This is pretty gross. So she's now a corpse, and she's hanging from a rod on the wall. And her maidservant, back in the upper world, she had said to her before she left, she said, let's figure out what her name was called. Ninshuber. Ninshuber set up a lament for her by the ruins. She beat the drum for her in the assembled places. She circled the houses of the gods. She tore at her eyes and tore at her mouth and tore at her thighs. She dressed herself in a single garment like a beggar. And alone she set out for Nippur at the temple of Enlil. And she cried out, "O Father Enlil, do not let your daughter be put to death in the underworld." And then she continues to plead with Enlil. But Father Enlil was angry and said, "My daughter craved the great above and has now craved the great below. She who receives the may, remember the power, of the underworld does not return. She who goes to the dark city stays there." So Enlil would not help. Next, Ninshuber went to the city of and the temple of Nanna. Nanna is the moon god. And cried out, "O Father Nanna, do not let your daughter be put to death in the underworld." She pleads with him, and Father Nanna answered angrily, "My daughter craved the great above and the great below. She who receives the power of the underworld does not return. She who goes to the dark city will not return." So then Ninshuber went to Eridu, to the temple of Enki. And when she got to the holy shrine, she cried out, "O Father Enki, do not let your daughter be put to death in the underworld." And this Father Enki, said, "What has happened? What has what has my daughter done? She has worried me. Inanna, queen of all the lands, holy priestess of heaven, I am troubled. I am grieved." And from under his fingernail, Father Enki brought forth dirt, and he fashioned the dirt into Kugara, a creature neither male nor female. And from the fingernail of his other hand he brought forth dirt, and he fashioned the dirt into a Galatur, a creature neither male nor female. He gave the food of life to the Kugara, and he gave the water of life to the Galtura, saying, "Go to the underworld, enter the doors like flies. Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, is moaning with cries of a woman about to give birth. No linen is spread on her body, her breasts are uncovered, her hair swirls about her head like leeks. And when she cries, 'Oh, oh, my heart,' you must cry, 'Oh, your heart.' And when she cries, 'Oh, my liver,' you must cry, 'Oh, your liver.' And she will offer you a gift. Ask her only for the corpse that hangs on the hook on the wall. And so, like flies, they set out for the underworld, and they passed through all the gates, and they got to her. They got to Ereshkigal. And let me switch to this other translation here. The Galatura and the Kurjara paid attention to the instructions, and when they got there, Ereshkigal said, "Oh, my heart." And they said to her, "Oh, you, mistress, you are troubled. Oh, your heart." And when she said, "Oh, my liver," they said to her, "Oh, your liver. Who are you? I tell you, from my heart to your heart, from my liver to your liver. If you are gods, I will talk with you. If you are mortals, may destiny be decreed for you." They made, I must give you a gift. And they made her swear to give them a gift. They were offered a river, and they did not accept it. They were offered a field of grain, and they did not accept it. They said to her, "Give us the corpse hanging on the hook." Holy Ereshkigal answered to the Galatura and the Kurjara. "The corpse is that of your queen," they said to her. She said to them, and then they replied, "Whether it is that of a king or a queen, we do not care. We wish only for the corpse hanging on the wall." They were given the corpse, and one of them sprinkled on it the life-giving plant, and the other the life-giving water, and thus Inanna rose. Inanna was about to ascend from the underworld when the Anuna seized her. Remember, these are the judges of the underworld. "Who has ever ascended from the underworld? If Inanna is to ascend from the underworld, let her provide a substitute." And so when they left the underworld, the Anuna were around her. Demons. They did not eat, they did not drink, but they restrained her on all sides. After Inanna ascended from the underworld, Ninkubura, remember her maidservant, the translations of names are a little different, but Ninshubura, I think, is how it's said in the other translation. She threw herself at the feet of Inanna and said how happy she was to see her. And the demons said to holy Inanna, "Inanna, proceed to your city. We will take her back." But holy Inanna answered the demons, "This is my minister of fair words. This is my escort. She did not forget my instructions. She did not neglect the orders I gave her. She made a lament for me, and she beat the drum for me, and she made the rounds and asked the gods for help for me. I cannot use her as a substitute." And so they went on. And at another city area, they found Kara. "Inanna, proceed to your city. We will take Kara back." But she answered them, "Kara is my singer, my manicurist, and my hairdresser. You can't take him." I love that. So they continue. And then they get to this other place where Lulal is. And, of course, they said, "Go ahead to your city, we'll take Lulal." And she said, "Outstanding, Lulal follows me at my right and my left. How could I turn him over to you?" And so they went on. And then they followed her to the great apple tree in the plain of Kulaba. And there was Dumuzi. Dumuzi is her husband, clothed in a magnificent garment and seated magnificently on the throne. The demons seized him there by his thighs. The 7 of them pounded the milk from his churns, and the 7 of them shook their heads. They would not let the shepherd play the pipe and the flute before her. So Dumuzi is a shepherd. She looked at him. It was the look of death. She spoke of him, the speech of anger, the shout of heavy guilt. Holy Inanna gave Dumuzi, the shepherd, into their hands. Oof, she gave him as a substitute. But Dumuzi let out a wail and turned very pale, and his hands raised to the heaven. To Utu, he says, "You are my brother-in-law. I am your relation by marriage. I brought butter to your mother's house. I brought milk to Ningol's house. Turn my hands into snakes' hands, and turn my feet into snakes' feet, so I can escape the demons. Let them not keep hold of me." Utu accepted his tears, and he turned his hands into snake hands and his feet into snake feet. And Dumuzi was able to free himself from their grasp. And then a bunch of the text is missing. But then we find out that somehow he's going to be able to spend half of the year with Inanna on land and half of the year with Ereshkigal in the underworld. Oof. What a weird ending. What a strange ending. It's almost reminiscent of Persephone, right? She has to spend half the year down there and half the year above land. And this is something about the seasons. This story is also somewhat about the seasons. It was about fertility in the land. But let's go to let's figure out the pattern here. Okay, so we have the pattern of what we call the hero's journey. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Joseph Campbell, and if you're not, I have a link to a really great video of the hero's journey. It's by this great channel called Crash Course Mythology, and they have little animations, and the guy's really charming and cool, and so take a look at that for specifics into the hero's journey, and all of their videos are really fun. So check those out. I'm just going to go to what the three most basic aspects of hero myths are and hero stories. It is a separation. It is being ripped from some sort of norm, and an initiation, which is like a transformation. Somehow you're refining your character. You're being stripped of things that you thought were your power, and then you come into your full power without them. So like her ring and her crown and her garments and her lapis lazuli beads and her measuring rod. These are all things that she thought made her powerful, but really she was powerful without it. That is the initiation. And then the return is a coming back as this changed individual back to your hometown. We could go over all of the myths, but I just wanted to focus on one that had a female protagonist because I think they're more exciting. We've just heard Hercules. We've heard of Prometheus bringing fire and all that. So that was the Descent of Inanna. As we can see, there is a separation, there is an initiation, and there is a return. So can we see this pattern elsewhere? Let's even go to Avatar, because I mentioned that earlier. We have a separation, right? So we have our army guy comes from Earth to this new planet, right? So this is an entirely different world, and in here he is initiated into the Na'vi culture. And I think the theme, I think he said something like, I've never found something worth fighting for. And so this whole time he is wrestling with who he is and his place in the world and what is worth fighting for. And of course, at the end, he fights with the Na'vi and tries to get all the humans out of this beautiful planet. So let's look at this on the cellular level. At any given any given day, 330 billion cells die and are born in your body. 330 billion. Can you believe that? That's insane. That's an insane amount. Those are replaced every day. That's equivalent to 1% of our cells. So in about 80 to 100 days, the equivalent of an entire you has been replaced. It has died and has been reborn. Okay, so this is a life, death, life cycle that we could call the separation, initiation, and return, life, death, rebirth, life, death, resurrection, life, death, life, whatever you want to call it. This is the pattern. Okay? So we have our cells are alive, they die, they are reborn. Okay? That's where we can see it on the cellular level. Let's go to a human body. We are formed as an aquatic creature inside of a little womb where we sit in water, and that's how we live, and we are fed intravenously. And then, of course, we go through this separation from the creature we are born from. We separate from the mother, and we turn into these land-dwelling mammals that breathe air and walk around and consume our food from other sources into, by ourselves. It's not through an umbilical cord. And then, of course, eventually we will die and we will go into the womb of the earth. But a separating from the mother, a living a life, and a return to the earth. So it's sort of the opposite of the cell example. Okay, the next example, let's talk about a forest ecosystem. We know that dying plants and trees provide nutrients for growing future trees. Also makes a way for the sunlight to come in and reach plants that weren't able to be seen, weren't able to receive the sunlight and do their photosynthesis and all that. There's one guy, Jerry Franklin, a leading forest ecologist from the University of Washington. He says, at the time a tree dies, it has only partially fulfilled its potential ecological function. Right? So as a tree dies, it goes down, it becomes nutrients for plants and animals. It also becomes a home for plants and for animals and insects and all that. So it is a dying in order to allow life to happen. It is a living tree to a dying tree in order for another living tree to be born. And that keeps the ecosystem going. Okay? We can see this in the cycle of a day. There is a dawn. There is a movement of the sun. It goes dark. It seems to have died. And then, of course, it rises again the next morning. Months, of course, we can see this. The moon is a great example of this. And all of the stories of lunar deities are so beautiful in the way that they show this cycle of, fluctuation. It's the life, it's getting bigger and bigger, and then it's waning and waning and waning, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, it's so cool. Okay, so we can see this on a seasonal level, right? We have spring, summer, fall, winter, spring again. And then in that you can talk about the planting and the reaping and all of the different ways in which the life-death life cycle is happening. Okay, so cosmically, let's talk about the cosmos. Okay, so the oscillating universe hypothesis is the one that makes the most sense to me. We had the Big Bang, so all of it was like in the teeniest, tiniest thing, but it had so much energy inside of it that it popped open and everything started flowing out from it and growing and whatever, and it goes all the way until all of the energy dissipates and turns into black holes and then gets, into itself and smaller and smaller and smaller, and with more and more energy density, and then all of a sudden it'll smash out again into another Big Bang. The oscillating universe, it's also called the Big Crunch theory. Is that everything in the universe would form a dense spot of infinitely small size. Cellular to the cosmic. This is just a pattern in the fabric of our cosmos and in the fabric of our being. Let's talk about this on the earthly to the spiritual realm. So earthly realm, in civilizations, we have these rites of passages, and think the easiest example to talk about is a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, or a quinceañera. These are rites of passage where a person transforms from a child into an adult, or from a child female to a menstruating female, and is therefore ready for, marriage. If we want to get all primitive, there was a child, and then now this is now an adult who can make children. I'm not saying that 15-year-olds should have babies, nor am I saying that they're adults. This is just where the rituals come from, right? So we have a lot of these rituals, and then let's go a little bit more into the psyche, and let's talk about the egoic hero's journey. Let me read this to you. The hero's journey is argued to be the symbolic representation of the psychological process where the ego goes from unconscious identification with the collective towards greater consciousness and individuation. It involves an often painful process of separation from the tribe or family and a confrontation with one's own shadow, with the hopes that the individuated personality will have learned something valuable that can be then shared with the original tribe or family, aka the collective. Isn't that the most succinctly beautiful way to talk about the hero's journey in terms of psychology or in terms of one's consciousness? Shout out to a friend of mine for writing that up for me. Okay, I know we talked about reincarnation last time, and whether you believe in reincarnation or just heaven, it doesn't matter for this analogy. Our soul, if you believe we have a soul, has somehow gotten into this physical body. And perhaps there are souls in all animals, but let's just go with me here. So, our soul is somewhere in another dimension outside of time, probably. It then incarnates into a body, has all of these experiences, and then eventually will leave the body when the body dies. And presumably it goes back into this other dimension, and it's like, guys, I have to tell you what I've learned. I've gotten to feel soil between my fingers, and I've gone swimming. I've gotten burned by a furnace, and I've felt something called embarrassment, which also kind of feels like you're being burned by a furnace, but also feels like you need to hide yourself. I've learned to care deeply for others. When somebody cries, I too have felt that I was supposed to cry. I've used my legs to climb mountains and to go down slides and eat cotton candy. The amount of experiences are unbelievable, you guys. We're still talking about the soul talking to its other soul friends. This is just what I imagine, because it seems like there is a purpose to the soul to learn a bunch of things and then maybe tell about it. If you're into reincarnation, perhaps then it goes into another body, learns more things. It's on and on and on it goes. But even in this one lifetime, there is this pattern of this life, death, rebirth, or this separation, initiation, and return. It's just unbelievable how deeply this is ingrained in our identity. If you think of even one moment you exist, there is some sort of choice for you, whether you're deciding whether or not to get a soda out of the fridge or somebody's asked you a question. There is a moment before, the moment of choosing, and a moment after the choice is made. And that beginning, middle, end, that is the way the world works. I think the reason that we can't get rid of these stories is because this is how the world works, as I said. This is how the cosmos work. It's the pattern built in to every single moment. Every single moment is a hero's journey. Every single choice you have to make, every single life decision you have to make, these are all hero's journeys. We're all on a hero's journey. And so on those times when you have to choose things that are really scary, or if you're just going through a change, or you have to move, my wife and I have to move out of this house in a month, and we didn't know where we were going to live. That's terrifying. But you know what makes it less terrifying is knowing that it's all been done before. You know the pattern. It's like watching a scary movie, and as a child, it ruins your it ruins your dreams for weeks and weeks. But as an adult, you know that it's actors and they're on a set and this is fake blood and there's, a DP who's working the camera, and so you can enjoy the scary moments while you're in the theater, but also have a good night's sleep that night. It's just, this is how to use this. This is like a life hack. Whenever you feel like you're in a journey that is terrible, you know how the movie ends. You're just going through it, and it's going to keep going through it and never stop, maybe. But okay, can we talk about snakes and tornadoes yet? I think we're ready for snakes and tornadoes. Okay. There's a word called Ouroboros. Ouroboros. What this is the symbol of a snake eating its own tail. Have you seen this? Snake eating its own tail. It symbolizes the life cycle. It's found all over the world in all different cultures. It's the symbol of eternal cyclic renewal. So that's the snake. But I want to add another dimension to it, because I don't think it's just a snake eating its own tail. I think it's... Imagine a snake in a tornado. You can start at the top of the tornado, bottom of the tornado, whatever you want. But imagine you're doing your circle, you're doing your life cycle, but you're moving somewhere. You're going in a direction. I think that's what's missing from the Ouroboros, is that there is a momentum. There is some sort of third dimension to it. So if a snake is in a tornado and it's still... Okay. Maybe this isn't the best visual. I think it's fantastic. If you don't like snakes, I'm sorry about that. Maybe another way to put it is... Gosh, do I have any other... Oh, okay. Like a musical scale. So you're going up the scale and you get to the same note, but it's not the same note. You're going to the next highest octave, right? So does that make sense? Are you getting it? So we're all going through all of these little tiny cyclones, these little scales, all these little hero's journeys, all day, everywhere, in the sky, in the trees, in the cells, in the body. And they're all cool, okay? Let me just, one last thing about your little snake journey through the tornado. So next time you're in a situation that feels really scary, or you feel like you have a difficult choice to make, imagine a snake in a tornado. And if that's not very comforting, you can think about it like you're Dorothy, essentially. We're all Dorothys, and somebody has given us a little pair of red slippers, and in the right moment, we'll realize that we have what we need to get us home. I think I'll do another episode about the boon, B-O-O-N, the something that's beneficial that the hero brings back to society, because it's not just... Like we said, it's a separation, initiation, and return, but that initiation, that's refining your character, finding your power. It's finding what is unique inside of you that you can bring forth to the world and give to the world. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your day. I hope you can enjoy your weather. It's getting a little chilly out here, but it's still nice out. And thank you for listening, and thank you for watching if you're on YouTube. I hope that you are blessed this week. Yeah. All right. Take care. We'll see you next time.